welcome to another Apollo Papyrus episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest grew up in a blue-collar farming household in Wisconsin and is the author of the novel Speedfitters, whose plot involves topics like artificial intelligence and the American healthcare system. His name is Scott Sweer, and here's my interview with Scott. Scott Sweer, did I pronounce your name correctly?
That's correct.
Welcome to Apollo Papyrus.
Thank you, Aaron.
You've described yourself as great at writing, but one who sucks at other occupations. What are some jobs you've held outside of the writing world?
Well, besides pool man, truck driver, student loan advisor, let's see, you know what? And here's the thing is, I think if I had an application, it would probably have 30 pages attached to it. So I honestly couldn't tell you how many jobs I've actually had, which is kind of embarrassing.
Now, I find it interesting that you used your creativity as a coping skill when you were a school-age child. And how did you use your creativity as a coping skill when you were younger?
Oh, man. Well, for me, I just didn't have a lot of friends throughout school. So I was like, I guess maybe maybe talking to yourself a lot and creating like imaginary friends.
Yeah,
stories.
Yeah, I talked to myself a lot when I was younger. So,
So I can we have that in common then.
Your novel is called Speedfitters, and without spoiling too much about your novel, what is it about?
Okay, well, I mean, you know what, and I don't have a problem spoiling my novel because I want people to read it. So now Speedfitters is basically it's a company that arrives at an accident scene before an ambulance and decides whether or not a victim's limb is reattached based on how good their insurance is. So basically, if you can't afford $10,000 deductible, your parts get sold off and you get a Speedfitters reattachment, or you get a Speedfitters prosthetic as a new limb. My main character, Stephen Kelly, he's working really hard to squirrel away money for his daughter, Pepper, so she doesn't have to go through the working class nightmare that he went through. And Pepper, his daughter, she could actually help him pay for college by using a Speedfitters kidney reclamation machine at her college campus. But Stevens told himself that his daughter will not trade her limbs for college tuition, which I'm sure a lot of kids wish they could do now. But now Speedfitters, I like to think it shows possibilities that we might encounter in the year 2048. Is AI going to take all of our jobs? Are we going to have to work until we die? Is violence going to consume us? Things like that. But Speedfitters is a corporate controlled world. Let's not have any mistakes about that, especially now that the guns are large enough to just blast limbs right off. And insurance companies sell insurance policies so expensive, so only the rich pretty much can maintain and keep their limbs, while everybody else, they become victims and they're wearing a Speedfitters prosthetic the rest of their life. Now, a little later in the book, we come across a political activist. His name is Winston Cup. He's like a groundswell political activist, and he creates the Common Sense Council. Now, the Common Sense Council it grows because people are just so angry about the corporate controlled world. So, and that's it. And I'm not afraid to spoil anything if people want it.
How did your background as someone who grew up in a blue-collar farming household in Wisconsin influence how you wrote your novel?
And it's the main thing with that is I really attach myself to blue-collar characters and to tragedy in that sense also because growing up on a farm, it's not easy. And I can remember when I was a kid seeing other kids and adults growing up in a farming community, a lot of kids had scars. And there was kids, I remember one kid that lost his arm in a farming accident. And there's so many people that are adults that have, scars and lost fingers. I mean, I have a finger that was surgically reattached after I was cutting wood with my dad, and he came down on it and just, cut the finger off. So it's a really hard lifestyle. That's why I really attach myself to this. And I read, and one of the crazy things is I read a book a long time ago, The Jungle, by Upton Sinclair, which talks about it talks about in Chicago, the stockyards and how hard that was for people to work on the stockyards in the 18 and 1900s, and how brutal of a work that was. And it's things like that and things that I latched onto really made me that kind of person that kind of roots for the underdog, which you don't see enough of.
How how did the recent and ongoing development of artificial intelligence technology, which is in real life still in its infancy for the most part, influence how you wrote your novel?
No, yeah, it's crazy how when we look at AI, it's just another technology that's being developed. But the funny thing is we've actually had robots in manufacturing plants for quite a few years now, for probably I want to say 20 to 30 years. But the strange thing now is with AI, it's not only going to affect blue collar, it's going to affect white collar people, which you know white collar people were pretty much immune to technology. I mean, most people in those arenas were able to harness that technology. Now it's threatening a lot of people that are in unique fields that you wouldn't think would be affected by AI. And now one of my chapters, chapter 11, I show artificial intelligence, and I show that the whole factory floor in this one company is being controlled by AI robots. But there's a unique twist. The name of this company is Diamond Star Blades. And what happens is in a year 2048, it's a unique twist where they actually bring humans back on the factory floor because now it's become so expensive to retool those robots, those AI robots. But what's also unique about that, though, is those workers now have gone back onto a factory floor that's really dangerous for humans to be on there because it used to be just for robots. And so a lot of these people are losing limbs left and right. So now Speedfitters comes in as a contractor and now is reattaching or is either reattaching or selling off most of their limbs and giving them a prosthetic. So what's happening is the people that are working on that factory floor are starting to look like the robots that they're replacing, which is really bizarre.
How long did it take you to write Speedfitters, and what were the easiest and most difficult parts of writing the novel for you?
Wow, it was this is my first book, so it took me a while. So a lot of it was a learning process for me going from a screenwriter to a novelist. It's unique because there was a lot more pressure I put on myself just because when I was a screenwriter, I didn't have all the pressure of me being a sole creator. And now, since I'm the sole creator, I went out of my way to make myself a better writer. Um, and I did, it's weird. I did a good amount of research, but a lot of it, I'm not a fan of doing research just because I like making things up. But I still did have to do research, and just a lot of it was on a lot on this newest technology of AI and how it's going to affect people. And it's just I really enjoyed, but one of the things I can say I really enjoyed about Speedfitters was imagining, us 25 years from now and trying to make as many threads from now to 25 years from now to try to give it, a legitimacy. So, I mean, I hope I accomplished that. I hope people think I did that. So,
Tell us more about your work as a screenwriter, and were you involved in any movies or TV shows on the production side of things?
no, you know what? Like I said, after college, I wrote screenplays for a long time, but I never could break into the business. It was really difficult. I got my butt kicked back to Wisconsin by Hollywood, and then, like I said, that too was the lowest point in my life because I failed at screenwriting. But I had to work through some depression there. And yeah, I mean, like drinking and just feeling like garbage. And then I came across a book, Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt, in my local library. And it was so visual that it reminded me of screenwriting. And that's what really lit a fire under me to write a novel. So no, I never got that opportunity, but it's okay. I mean, I think the great thing about that is I think I'm a lot better writer now. I think I think it really has improved what I do. I mean, I guess it's I can pretty much say about that. So
Is your novel Speedfitters, is that self-published, traditionally published, or hybrid published?
that is self-published. It's a dystopic book. It does have romance elements in it, but it's a dystopic book first. So it's not the easiest to get published. It's not like a romance novel and I mean, I went out of my way to try to find an agent. And that didn't happen. And basically, if you don't have an agent, it's nearly impossible to get published. But the great thing I like about self-publishing is I got to pick the cover art myself. I really didn't have anybody looking over my shoulder to tell me how the book should be. I felt like that probably gave me more freedom. Um, but yeah, it's a more difficult process, I'd say, I guess. But you basically have more control of the project, but it is harder. I mean, you know, I guess I would, I guess sometimes I would like to have an agent. I would like to have more people on my team, so I don't feel like I'm just on my own. I like the result of the book though, and I worked really hard to get it to that point so people wouldn't say, well, it looks self-published. I don't want people to say that. I would put my book up against anything that's being published.
Do you plan on, or are you considering writing more books? And if so, what are some ideas you have for books you will or may write?
Well, there's going to be two more in this series. The next one is going to be Speed Monitors. And that basically, I carry over that character, Winston Cup, that we meet in the first book. And he becomes a worldwide leader now. He starts out as that groundswell activist on college campuses with that common sense council. He rises up and he becomes a world leader with the help of the internet and social media and influencers. So I want to kind of show that. I want to come because these my books have that theme. This whole theme of the overarching theme is going to be how we seem to be losing control of technology. And then the third book, which is going to be, it's tentatively titled The Factory. That's still in the Genesis stage, but basically that will be Winston Cupp's fall from grace. Um, so,
Now, you've said the three most important words in writing are make it interesting. What is the best advice you have for authors when it comes to making their works interesting for readers?
I guess it's the development of the characters. There's just a lot of things. But making it interesting, I mean, can be anything from either going on a new direction, making a new kind of story, something that somebody hasn't done before, which is interesting in itself. Instead of a lot of things are being recycled now, or working hard to really develop characters. I mean, I it's there's a lot of things to it. I guess it's hard for me to jump on just one thing because maybe that's such a generic thing to say, make it interesting. But there's so many things that you can do. Just make something that people haven't seen before, or challenge yourself as an author. And don't be afraid to throw something out there that you think might challenge an audience.
My final question is about artificial intelligence in real life. How can human society prevent being taken over? And you've kind of talked about this a little bit earlier in the interview, but how can human society prevent being taken over by its own creation of artificial intelligence in real life, like what happened in your novel?
You know, I hate to say this, but I don't think we can take the genies out of the bottle. I don't think it's going to go back in the bottle. But I think what we need to do is we need to start talking about what's going on, and we also need to understand that we can't let corporations make the decisions on AI, and that's what's happening right now. We need to have it so we don't let AI just run amok. And we also have to support the workers that are going to be affected by AI. And often when there's technological, it's easy to say, but when there's changes like that, we have to support the workers that fall through the cracks. And I don't know. See, we can't leave that to big industries because a corporation, their sole thing is to make as much money as they can and use AI to eliminate as many workers as they can for their bottom line, and that's what they do. And we have to understand that. So we have to have a way to support the workers that are going to fall through the cracks.
Scott, thank you for appearing on Apollo Papyrus. You were an insightful guest.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you much.
That was a wonderful interview, and I thank Scott for appearing on this podcast. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding you all to write and read your passion. Bye for now. Remember to subscribe to the Apollo Papyrus YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@ApolloPapyrus and the Apollo Papyrus Substack newsletter at apollopapyrus.substack.com. Y'all can visit the Apollo Papyrus website at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/Apollo Papyrus and follow Apollo Papyrus on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at Apollo Papyrus. Copyright 2024, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.